The knock came at 9:47 on a Tuesday night. I know because I was staring at the clock, waiting for my son to text me that he'd landed safely in Boston. The knock was soft, hesitant, not the confident rap of a delivery driver or the urgent pounding of someone in real trouble. It was the knock of someone who wasn't sure they deserved to be heard. I walked to the door with my phone still in my hand, my thumb hovering over David's last message. The peephole revealed a silhouette I hadn't seen in 10 years. Thinner, grayer, smaller somehow, as if the world had worn him down to something less than what he used to be. My ex-husband stood on my porch with his shoulders hunched and his hands shoved deep into the pockets of a jacket I didn't recognize. For a moment I just stared through that tiny circle of glass, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. The last time I saw him, he was walking out of our house with 2 suitcases and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He told me he was done pretending, that she made him feel alive, that I had become background noise in his own life. He never looked back, not once. And now here he was, looking at my door like it was the gates of heaven and he was a sinner begging for mercy. Opened it. I don't know why. Maybe it was muscle memory. Maybe it was the part of me that still remembered what it felt like to love him. Or maybe I just wanted to see what 10 years of karma looked like up close. "Grace," he said. His voice cracked on my name. "I know I have no right to be here." I didn't say anything. I just stood there holding the door half open, creating a barrier between us that felt both necessary and cruel. His eyes were red-rimmed and exhausted, the kind of tired that comes from months of sleepless nights, not just one bad day. There were lines on his face that hadn't been there before, deep grooves around his mouth that made him look like he'd spent the last decade frowning. "I need your help," he said finally. The words came out barely above a whisper, like he was ashamed to speak them out loud. I almost laughed. The sound bubbled up in my chest like acid, bitter and burning. Of course he needed my help. That's what I was to him, wasn't it? The woman who fixed things. The woman who held everything together while he fell apart. The woman who picked up the pieces he scattered behind him like breadcrumbs. "You need my help," I repeated slowly, letting each word hang in the air between us. "That's interesting, Michael. 'Cause 10 years ago I needed yours. I needed you to stay. I needed you to remember the vows you made. I needed you to look at your son and choose us." His face crumpled. He looked down at his shoes, expensive leather things that were scuffed and worn at the toes. Everything about him screamed failure. The wrinkled shirt, the trembling hands, the way he couldn't quite meet my eyes. "I was a fool," he said. "I threw away everything that mattered for something that meant nothing. And now you're here because you finally figured that out. 10 years too late, Michael. 10 years." I started to close the door, but his hand shot out and stopped it. Not forcefully. Just a gentle pressure against the wood. The touch of someone who knew they had no right to ask for anything but was desperate enough to try anyway. "It's not about me," he said quickly. His voice was urgent now, raw with something that might have been genuine fear. "Grace, please. I wouldn't be here if it was just about me. You know I wouldn't." "But David." My blood turned to ice. "What about David?" The words came out sharp as broken glass. "He's in trouble. Real trouble. The kind that doesn't go away with an apology or a check. The kind that—" He stopped, his breath hitching. "Please. Can I just come in? 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." I looked at him standing there on my porch, this ghost of the man I used to know, and I felt something twist inside my chest. Not love. That had died a long time ago, buried under the weight of unpaid bills and lonely nights and my son's questions about why Daddy didn't call anymore. But maybe it was recognition. The acknowledgement that we had shared a life once, even if he had burned it to the ground. Against every instinct screaming at me to slam the door in his face, I stepped back and let him in. He walked past me into the living room, and I watched him take in the space with wide eyes. The new furniture, the photographs on the walls, the college acceptance letter framed on the mantel. Evidence of a life rebuilt without him. Proof that I had survived. You did well for yourself, he said quietly. I had no choice. My voice was flat, emotionless. When you left, you took everything. The savings, the credit, even the car. You left me with a 7-year-old boy and a mortgage I couldn't pay. So yes, Michael, I did well. Because the alternative was letting us both drown. He flinched. But I wanted him to feel it. Every sleepless night. Every missed meal. Every time I had to explain to David why his father chose someone else. I can't change the past, he said. Believe me, I've tried. I've played it over in my head 1,000 times, wondering what I was thinking, how I could have been so stupid, so selfish. And yet here you are asking me for something. Again. He turned to face me, and for the first time since he walked through my door, he looked me directly in the eyes. What I saw there made me pause. It wasn't manipulation. It wasn't the practiced charm he used to wield like a weapon. It was genuine terror. David called me 3 weeks ago, he said. He's in trouble with some people. Bad people. He owes money. A lot of money. And they're threatening. His voice broke. Grace, they're threatening to hurt him. The room tilted. I grabbed the back of the couch to steady myself. What are you talking about? David is fine. He's at Boston University. He's studying engineering. He dropped out 6 months ago. The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt the air leave my lungs in a rush. No, I whispered. No, he texts me every day. He sends me pictures of campus. Old pictures, Michael said gently. Grace, I'm sorry. But he's been lying to you. He got involved with some guys who run an underground gambling operation. He thought he could make quick money. Instead, he lost everything. And now they want $50,000, or they're going to. I held up my hand, cutting him off. My mind was spinning, trying to process what he was telling me. David, my baby boy, the child I had sacrificed everything for. The reason I got up every morning and kept fighting even when I wanted to give up. He couldn't be in that kind of trouble. He wouldn't lie to me, would he? Why didn't he come to me? Yes. My voice sounded hollow, like it was coming from very far away. Michael looked at me with something that might have been pity. He's ashamed. He knows how hard you worked to send him to school. He knows what you gave up. He couldn't face disappointing you. So he came to you instead. The man who abandoned him when he was 7 years old. He had nowhere else to turn. I tried to help him, Grace. I gave him everything I had. But it wasn't enough. I'm broke. The business failed. She left me 2 years ago and took everything. I'm living in a studio apartment and driving for Uber just to make rent. I have nothing left to give him. I stared at this broken man standing in my living room, and I felt the weight of 10 years pressing down on my shoulders. All the anger, all the pain, all the nights I cried myself to sleep wondering how he could have thrown us away so easily. And now here he was, asking me to save the son he never bothered to raise. The irony was almost beautiful in its cruelty. Get out, I said quietly. Grace, get out of my house, Michael. Right now. Before I call the police. He opened his mouth to say something else, but the look on my face must have stopped him. He nodded slowly, turned and walked toward the door. His hand was on the knob when he stopped and looked back at me one last time. I know you hate me, he said. I deserve that. I deserve worse than that. But David is innocent in all of this. He's just a kid who made a mistake. Please don't punish him for my sins. Then he left, closing the door softly behind him. I stood there in the silence of my living room, my phone clutched in my trembling hand, and I realized that the knock at 9:47 had changed everything. Again, just like it did 10 years ago. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Instead, I sat on the edge of my bed with my phone in my hands, staring at David's last message. It was a photo of a coffee cup with the Boston University logo, captioned "Late Night Study Session," posted 6 hours ago, liked by 43 people, commented on by his friends with jokes and study tips and encouragement. All of it a lie. I wanted to call him right then. Demand answers. Scream at him for lying to me, for throwing away everything we'd worked for. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the memory of another night 10 years ago, when everything fell apart the first time. When I learned that the people you love most are often the ones who hurt you deepest. The memory came flooding back whether I wanted it to or not. It was a Thursday in March. I remember because Thursdays were my favorite day of the week back then. Michael always came home early on Thursdays. We'd have dinner together as a family, the three of us around the table, and David would tell us about his day at school. His missing front tooth. His spelling test. The frog he'd found at recess. Simple things. Beautiful things. I'd made lasagna that night, Michael's favorite. I'd spent the afternoon layering pasta and cheese and sauce, imagining his smile when he walked through the door and smelled it baking. I was wearing the blue dress he'd bought me for our anniversary, the one he said made my eyes look like the ocean. I wanted to be beautiful for him. I wanted him to see me the way he used to, back when we were young and everything felt possible. David was 7 years old, sitting at the kitchen table doing his homework. He was drawing a picture of our family for art class. 3 stick figures holding hands in front of a house with a triangle roof and a yellow sun in the corner. He'd asked me earlier how to spell forever, because he wanted to write our family forever at the bottom. I helped him sound it out. Forever. Forever. Michael was supposed to be home at 6. By 6:30 the lasagna was getting cold. By 7 David was asking when Daddy would be there. By 7:30 I was calling his cell phone for the 4th time, listening to it ring and ring before going to voicemail. Hey, it's Michael. Leave a message. I didn't. What was there to say? Where are you? Why aren't you home? Do you even remember you have a family? I fed David dinner in front of the TV, breaking our house rule about eating at the table. He didn't complain. He just ate his lasagna quietly, his eyes flicking to the door every few minutes, waiting for the sound of his father's key in the lock. Never came. Michael walked through the door at 10:15. I was sitting on the couch in the dark, the TV playing some show I wasn't watching. David had been asleep for over an hour. His family drawing left unfinished on the kitchen table. Sorry I'm late, Michael said casually, like he was 15 minutes behind schedule, not 4 hours. He set his briefcase down by the door and loosened his tie. Got caught up at the office. I didn't say anything. I just looked at him standing there in the dim light from the hallway, and I knew. I don't know how. Maybe it was the way he wouldn't meet my eyes. Maybe it was the faint smell of perfume that wasn't mine. Maybe it was just the instinct that comes from loving someone long enough to know when they're lying. There's lasagna in the kitchen, I said quietly. If you're hungry. He looked at me for a long moment, and something passed between us. An acknowledgement. A confession without words. I'm not, he said. That's when I knew for sure. Michael was never not hungry. He could eat a full meal and still raid the fridge an hour later. It was one of the things I loved about him, the way he approached life with an appetite. Food. Work. Except now his appetite was for something else. Someone else. Who is she? He asked. My voice was calm. Calm. The kind of calm that comes right before a storm. He froze. His hand was still on his tie, halfway through pulling it off. Grace. Just tell me. Don't lie to me anymore. I deserve at least that much. He sank down into the chair across from me, his face illuminated by the flickering blue light of the TV. He looked tired, guilty, but not sorry. Not really. Her name is Rebecca, he said. She's my secretary. It's not, it just happened. I didn't plan it. How long? Does it matter? How long, Michael? He rubbed his hands over his face. 6 months. 6 months. Half a year. All those Thursdays I'd cooked dinner and worn pretty dresses and believed we were happy. All those nights he'd come home late with excuses about client meetings and deadlines. All those mornings he'd kissed me goodbye and told me he loved me. All of it built on lies. Are you in love with her? Yes. I needed to know. I needed to understand how something like this happened. How you go from promising forever to throwing it all away for someone you work with. He didn't answer right away. He just sat there staring at his hands, and that silence told me everything. I don't know, he said finally. Maybe. She makes me feel like myself again. Like I'm more than just a husband and a father and a guy with a mortgage. When I'm with her, I feel alive. And with me you feel what? Dead. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean, Michael? Explain it to me. Because I'm standing here trying to understand how I became the villain in your story. How being a wife and a mother turned me into something you need to escape from. He looked up at me then, and I saw something in his eyes that made my chest ache. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even guilt anymore. It was pity. He felt sorry for me. You didn't do anything wrong, he said softly. That's what makes this so hard. You're a good person, Grace. A good mother. Good wife. But I can't keep pretending that this is enough for me. That you're enough. Those words. You're not enough. They lodged themselves somewhere deep in my chest, right next to my heart, and I felt something inside me crack. What about David? I whispered. What about our son? I'll still be his father. I'll still see him. This doesn't change that. This changes everything. He stood up and walked toward the stairs. I thought maybe he was going to go upstairs, pack a bag, leave that very night. But he stopped at the bottom step and turned back to look at me. I'm not happy, Grace. Haven't you noticed? I haven't been happy for a long time. So fix it, I said desperately. We can go to counseling. We can try harder. We can. I don't want to fix it. I want out. The words hung in the air like smoke. Final. Irreversible. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight, he said. We can talk about logistics in the morning. I'll make sure you and David are taken care of. I'm not a monster. Then he walked upstairs, leaving me standing alone in the dark living room with the sound of some laugh track echoing from the TV and the ruins of my life scattered around my feet. I didn't cry that night. I was too numb for tears. I just sat on that couch until the sun came up, thinking about the family drawing on the kitchen table. 3 stick figures holding hands. Our family forever. Forever lasted 10 years, 2 months and 6 days. The next morning, David came downstairs in his pajamas with his hair sticking up and his eyes still sleepy. He climbed into my lap even though he was getting too big for it, and he wrapped his arms around my neck. Is Daddy still here? He asked. I held him tight and breathed in the smell of his shampoo, this little person who was counting on me to keep his world safe and whole. And I lied. Yes, baby. Daddy's still here. But even as I said it, I could hear Michael moving around upstairs, opening drawers, packing bags, preparing to leave us behind for a woman who made him feel alive. Within 2 weeks he was gone. He took the savings account. He took his name off the mortgage but left me with the payments. He took the car and left me with the minivan that barely ran. And he took every bit of security I'd ever felt, leaving me with nothing but a 7-year-old boy and a crushing sense of failure. I tried to reach him. God, I tried. I called and left messages begging him to reconsider. Come home. To remember what we'd built together. But he never called back. And when I finally reached him 2 months later because David wouldn't stop crying at night, asking why Daddy didn't love us anymore, Michael told me that Rebecca was pregnant. They were having a baby. Starting a new family. Better family. He said it would be easier for everyone if we made a clean break. That seeing David would be too confusing. Too painful. So he didn't. My son waited by the window every Saturday for 6 months, believing his father would show up for their weekend visits. And every Saturday, I watched his little face crumble when the hours passed and no one came. Eventually he stopped waiting. He stopped asking. He stopped drawing pictures of our family. And I promised myself that I would never let anyone hurt him like that again. Now, sitting on the edge of my bed 10 years later, staring at my phone with Michael's words echoing in my head, I realized I'd failed. David was hurting. My son was in trouble. And the man who'd abandoned us both had shown up asking me to save him. The cruelest part was that I knew I would. Because that's what mothers do. We save our children even when it costs us everything. Even when it means helping the man who destroyed us. I looked at the clock. 3:17 in the morning. Then I did what I should have done hours ago. Called my son. The phone rang 6 times before David answered. His voice was thick with sleep and confusion. Mom, it's 3 in the morning. Are you okay? I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. How do you ask your child if they've been lying to you? How do you tell them their father showed up after a decade of silence with stories about gambling debts and dangerous people? Mom, more alert now. Worried. What's wrong? I just needed to hear your voice, I said finally. It wasn't the conversation I'd planned, but hearing him there, real and alive on the other end of the line, made everything else feel too big to tackle at 3 in the morning. Are you sure you're okay? You sound weird. I'm fine, baby. Go back to sleep. We'll talk later. After I hung up, I sat there in the darkness and let myself remember what it felt like before everything fell apart. Before Michael left. Before the struggles and the shame and the grinding poverty that came after. I needed to remember why I fought so hard. Why I couldn't give up, even when giving up seemed like the only logical choice. We were happy once. That's the part people forget when they hear stories like mine. They hear about the betrayal and the abandonment and they assume the whole marriage was a lie. But it wasn't. For years we were genuinely beautifully happy. Michael and I met in college. He was studying business. I was studying elementary education. We met at a party I didn't want to go to, introduced by a mutual friend who thought we'd be perfect together. She was right. He had this energy about him that was magnetic. He talked about building something meaningful, creating a life that mattered. He wanted a family, home, all the traditional things that people my age were supposed to be too cool to want. But I wanted them too. I wanted them desperately. We got married 2 years after graduation. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. I wore my mother's dress, altered to fit me. Michael wore a suit he'd borrowed from his brother. We couldn't afford much, but it didn't matter. We were building something together, brick by brick. Our first apartment was a tiny 1-bedroom in a neighborhood that was up and coming, which was real to code for slightly dangerous but cheap. The bathroom sink leaked. The heat only worked half the time. Our bed was a mattress on the floor until we saved enough for a frame. But God, we were happy. I'd come home from teaching 2nd grade and find Michael already there, tie loosened, working on his laptop at our second-hand kitchen table. He was building his consulting business from nothing, taking any client who would hire him, working 16-hour days. But he'd always stop when I walked in. Always. There's my girl, he'd say, and he'd pull me into his lap and kiss my neck and ask me about my day. He genuinely wanted to know which kids were struggling with reading, which parents were giving me trouble. Every small detail of my small life mattered to him. We'd make dinner together in that cramped kitchen. Nothing fancy. Pasta, grilled cheese, whatever we could afford. We'd eat on the couch watching reruns of shows we'd already seen. His arm around my shoulders, my feet tucked under his leg. Simple. Perfect. Someday, he'd say, I'm going to buy you a house. A real house with a yard and a garage and one of those fancy refrigerators with the ice maker in the door. I'd laugh and tell him I didn't need any of that. I had everything I needed right there. When I got pregnant with David, Michael cried. Actual tears running down his face as he held the positive test in his shaking hands. He got down on his knees and pressed his ear to my still flat stomach and whispered, "Hey little one, I'm your dad. I'm going to love you so much." And he did. God, he loved that baby. The business was doing better by then. We'd moved to a 2-bedroom apartment. We had real furniture. We could afford things like prenatal vitamins and maternity clothes, and a crib that wasn't handed down from someone else's child. Michael went to every doctor's appointment. He read pregnancy books and installed the car seat 3 weeks early, practicing until he got it perfect. When I went into labor, he held my hand for 17 hours and never once complained or looked tired or acted like he wanted to be anywhere else. David was born at 6:13 in the morning on a Tuesday in April. £7 4 ounces. Perfect. Michael held him and sobbed. He's ours, he kept saying. Grace, he's ours. Those first years with David were the best of my life. Yes, I was exhausted. Yes, money was tight. Yes, there were moments when I thought I might lose my mind from the lack of sleep and the endless cycle of diapers and feedings and crying. But we were a team. We were building our family. Michael's business kept growing. By the time David was 3, we could afford to buy a house. Not a mansion. Not even close. But a 3-bedroom ranch with a fenced backyard and that fancy refrigerator Michael had promised me 5 years earlier. I remember the day we moved in. David running through the empty rooms. His footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. Michael picking me up and carrying me over the threshold like we were newlyweds again. We made love in our new bedroom on the floor because the movers hadn't brought the bed yet, and we laughed about the absurdity of it. 2 adults in our 30s acting like teenagers. This is it, Michael said afterward, both of us lying on the carpet staring at the ceiling. This is everything I've ever wanted. David, his house. I'm the luckiest man alive. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? Every piece of evidence in our life together pointed to the truth of that statement. Our life developed a rhythm. A beautiful, predictable rhythm. I'd wake up at 6 and make coffee while Michael showered. David would stumble into the kitchen in his dinosaur pajamas, still half asleep, and climb into my lap. Michael would come down smelling like soap and cologne, kiss both of us on the head, grab his travel mug and head to the office. I'd get David ready for school, make his lunch, drive him to the elementary school 3 blocks away, teach my own class of 2nd graders, pick David up at 3, take him to soccer practice or piano lessons or the park, make dinner, wait for Michael to come home. And he always did. For years he always came home. We had Friday movie nights, Sunday morning pancakes, yearly beach vacations where we stayed in cheap motels and built sandcastles and collected shells. We had birthday parties and Christmas mornings and lost teeth and report cards. We had a life. I know it wasn't perfect. Michael worked too much. I was probably too focused on David. We let the romance slip sometimes. Let days go by without really seeing each other. But I thought that was normal. I thought all marriages went through phases like that. I thought we were solid. The last good memory I have before everything changed was David's 7th birthday party. We'd rented a bounce house for the backyard and invited his whole class. 27 7-year-olds hopped up on cake and juice boxes, running through our house screaming. Michael and I stood in the kitchen watching the chaos through the window. He put his arm around my waist and pulled me close. We made a good kid, he said. We did. I love you, Grace. You know that, right? I know. He kissed the top of my head and I leaned into him, feeling safe and content and certain that this was my forever. This man, this child, this life we'd built together with our own hands. 3 weeks later, he told me about Rebecca. Looking back now, I can see the signs I missed. The late nights that became more frequent. The way he stopped asking about my day. The distance in his eyes when he looked at me, like he was seeing through me instead of at me. The way he started picking fights about nothing like he was trying to justify something to himself. But in the moment, I didn't see any of it. I was too busy living our life. Teaching my classes, raising our son, maintaining our home. I was so focused on holding everything together that I didn't notice he was already pulling away. That's what I lost when Michael left. Not just a husband, not just financial security. I lost the life we'd built, the future we'd planned, the certainty that comes from believing you know someone completely. I lost my faith in forever. And worst of all, I lost my ability to trust my own judgment. Because if I could be so wrong about him, about us, about everything I thought was true, then what else was I wrong about? How could I trust anything I felt or believed or knew? That's the real damage betrayal does. It doesn't just break your heart. It breaks your sense of reality. It makes you question every memory, wondering which moments were real and which were just him pretending, going through the motions, waiting for his chance to escape. The house we'd bought together became a prison I couldn't afford to maintain. The refrigerator with the ice maker in the door became a reminder of broken promises. Every room held memories that now felt contaminated by the knowledge that he'd been lying the whole time. But I couldn't leave. Where would we go? Had no savings. No family nearby who could help. No safety net. So I stayed in that house, in those rooms, surrounded by the ghost of what we used to be. And I pretended everything was fine. For David. Always for David. Now, sitting in the darkness of my bedroom in a different house, one I'd bought with my own money through my own effort, I wondered if history was repeating itself. If David had learned from his father how to lie, how to pretend, how to smile and send pictures and act like everything was fine while his world was falling apart. Like father, like son. The thought made me sick. But it also made me determined. Because I'd survived Michael's betrayal. I'd rebuilt from nothing. And I'd be damned if I'd let my son go down the same path his father had. Whatever trouble David was in, whatever he'd done, I would face it. Not because Michael showed up and asked me to, but because that's what mothers do. We save our children from themselves. I called David back at 7 in the morning. I couldn't wait any longer. Every minute that passed felt like acid eating through my chest. He answered on the second ring. Mom, seriously, what's going on? You're freaking me out. Your father came to see me last night. Silence. Complete, absolute silence. Not even breathing. David. I'm here. His voice had changed. All the sleepy warmth was gone, replaced by something flat and hard. He told me you're not at school. He told me you're in trouble. He told me you owe money to dangerous people. So I'm going to ask you once, and I need you to tell me the truth. Is any of that real? More silence. Then a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. I couldn't tell which. How did he even find you? David asked. I told him not to contact you. I told him I'd handle it. My blood turned to ice. So it's true. All of it. Mom. Don't you dare mom me right now. I have been sending you money every month for school. For rent. For books. For food. I've been working double shifts at the hospital so you could have the education I never got. And you've been lying to me. I didn't want to lie. His voice cracked. I was going to tell you. I was going to fix it first and then tell you so you wouldn't have to worry. Fix what exactly? What did you do? He took a shaky breath. When he spoke, the words came out in a rush, like he'd been holding them in for so long that they'd built up pressure behind his teeth. I dropped out in April. I was failing 2 classes and I couldn't handle it anymore. Pressure. Everyone expecting me to be perfect. To make something of myself. To justify all the sacrifices you made. I felt like I was drowning. So you quit. My voice was sharp. Cruel. I couldn't help it. I was going to go back. Swear. I just needed a break. But I needed money to survive while I figured things out. And I didn't want to ask you for more than you were already giving. So when some guys I knew said they could help me make quick cash, I thought. You thought gambling was the answer. It wasn't supposed to be gambling. They said it was sports consultation. Analysis. Using statistics to predict outcomes. It sounded legitimate. But it wasn't. No, it wasn't. I pressed my hand to my forehead, trying to process what he was telling me. My brilliant son. My baby boy who'd gotten straight A's and scored in the top percentile on his CTs and earned a full academic scholarship. That boy was gone. In his place was a liar and a dropout who'd gotten involved with criminals. How much do you owe them? Yes. Mom, you don't need to. How much, David? $53,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. Actually gasped. $53,000. More than I made in a year working as a nurse. More than I'd saved in the last decade. More than I could ever hope to come up with. Oh my God, I whispered. David, what were you thinking? I wasn't thinking. That's the problem. I thought I could win it back. I thought I was smart enough to beat the system. And every time I lost, I just bet more, trying to recover what I'd already lost. It spiraled so fast. And you went to your father, the man who abandoned us, who hasn't called you on your birthday in 10 years, who chose a stranger over his own son. You went to him before you came to me. I couldn't come to you." He was crying now. I could hear it in his voice, the tears making his words thick and distorted. "Mom, do you have any idea what it's like being your son? Perfect Grace, who rebuilt her life from nothing, who worked 3 jobs while getting her nursing degree, who never complained, never gave up, never showed weakness. How was I supposed to tell you I failed? So you lied instead. You let me believe everything was fine. You took my money and you lied. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know I screwed up. I know there's no excuse. But I'm scared, Mom. These people aren't playing around. They've been calling me, following me. One of them showed up at my apartment last week and told me I had 2 weeks to come up with the money or they'd make me pay another way. What does that mean? I don't know. I don't want to find out." I stood up and started pacing my bedroom, my free hand clenched into a fist at my side. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to get in my car and drive to Boston right now. To put myself between my son and whatever danger he'd gotten himself into. But another part of me, a harder part that had been forged in the fire of Michael's betrayal, wanted to let him face the consequences of his choices. "You're just like him," I said quietly. "What?" "Your father. You're just like him. The lying, the selfishness, the cowardice. I spent 10 years trying to make sure you didn't turn into him, and here we are. That's not fair." "Fair? You want to talk to me about fair? I gave up everything for you. Everything. I could have walked away when your father left. I could have given up, let the state take care of you, started over somewhere new. But I didn't. I stayed. I fought. I worked myself to the bone to give you a chance at a better life. And this is how you repay me. I know, and I'm sorry. But Mom, I need help. Please. I don't know what else to do." The desperation in his voice broke something inside me. He was still my baby. Still the little boy who used to climb into my lap and fall asleep with his head on my shoulder. Still the child I'd promised to protect no matter what. But $53,000. I didn't have that kind of money. I'd saved maybe $8,000 in my emergency fund. I could borrow against my house maybe. Take out loans. Destroy my own financial security to save him. Again. "I need time to think," I said. "Mom, I don't have time." They said 2 weeks. That was 6 days ago. Then you should have come to me 6 days ago. Or 6 months ago. Or the first moment you realized you were in over your head. But you didn't. You chose to lie. You chose to handle it yourself. And now you want me to drop everything and save you. Please. That word. Please. The same word Michael had used when he stood on my porch begging for help. The same word I'd used when I begged him not to leave. Please. Such a small word to carry so much weight. "I'll call you back," I said, and hung up before he could respond. I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the wall. The framed photo of David at his high school graduation smiled back at me. Cap and gown. Honor cords. That proud, confident grin that said the world was his for the taking. All of it built on a foundation that was crumbling. My phone buzzed. Text from Michael. "Did you talk to him? Will you help?" I stared at those words for a long time. Will you help? Not can you help, or are you able to help? Will you? An assumption. A presumption that of course I would sacrifice myself again. That I would bankrupt myself to clean up their mess. I typed back. "Why should I?" His response came immediately. "Because he's your son." He's your son too. Where were you for the last 10 years when he needed a father? Where were you when he was crying himself to sleep? Where were you on his birthday, his graduation, every milestone you missed? The 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times. Finally. "You're right. Failed him. Failed both of you. But that doesn't change the fact that he's in danger right now. Whatever you think of me, he's innocent in this. He made a mistake. Stupid, terrible mistake. But he doesn't deserve to get hurt because of it." I wanted to throw my phone across the room. I wanted to scream. I wanted to turn back time and shake my younger self and tell her not to trust Michael, not to build a life with him, not to believe in forever. But I couldn't change the past. I could only deal with the wreckage it left behind. Another text. I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but Grace, please. He's all I have left. He's the only good thing I ever did. Don't let my mistakes destroy him. I looked at that message for a long time. He's all I have left. What about Rebecca? What about the baby they'd had together? The new family that was supposed to be better than us? I typed. What happened to your other family? Long pause. Then. She left me when the money ran out. Took our daughter. I haven't seen either of them in 18 months. So there it was. Karma had come for Michael after all. He'd thrown away his family for someone who only wanted him when he was successful. And when he had nothing left to offer, she disappeared. Just like he'd done to us. I should have felt satisfaction, justice, some kind of vindication. But all I felt was tired. Another text. Are you going to help him or not? I turned off my phone and lay back on my bed, staring at the ceiling. The sun was coming up, painting the walls with soft pink light. Somewhere in Boston, my son was probably pacing his apartment, terrified and alone. Somewhere else, my ex-husband was waiting for me to save the day. And here I was, caught in the middle of their chaos, trying to figure out if I was strong enough to do this again. To sacrifice everything. Again. To put myself last. Again. To be the one who held everything together while everyone else fell apart. Again. I closed my eyes and felt the weight of every choice I'd ever made pressing down on my chest. This was the collapse. Not the moment Michael left. Not the years of struggle that followed. Right now. The moment when I had to choose between saving my son and saving myself. And the worst part was, we all knew which choice I'd make. I always did. I went to work that day because I didn't know what else to do. I pulled a 12-hour shift at the hospital, moving through the motions like a ghost, taking vitals, administering medications, smiling at patients and pretending everything was fine while my world was crumbling for the second time in my life. During my lunch break, I sat in my car in the parking garage and made phone calls. First, my bank. I had $8,347 in savings. Money I'd been setting aside for years, adding $50 here, $100 there whenever I could. My emergency fund. My safety net. The thing that let me sleep at night knowing I'd never be completely helpless again. I'd like to inquire about a personal loan, I told the banker. Certainly. How much were you looking to borrow? $45,000. That's quite a substantial amount. May I ask what it's for? Does it matter? Well, it helps us determine the type of loan that would best suit your needs. Home improvement. Medical expenses. Education. The irony almost made me laugh. It's for my son's education. Wonderful. We have several student loan options. Let me pull up your account and we can discuss terms. I listened as she ran through my credit score, my employment history, my current debts. The mortgage I'd been paying faithfully for 6 years. The car loan I just finished last month. My credit card with a $2,000 balance that I paid down every month. Based on your financial profile, we could approve you for a loan of up to $20,000 at an interest rate of 11.5%. That's not enough. I need $45,000. I understand, but given your income and existing obligations, that's the maximum amount we can responsibly lend. However, you do have equity in your home. Have you considered a home equity line of credit? My house. The one thing I'd built from nothing. The one piece of security I had left. How much equity do I have? Let me see here. Approximately $62,000. We could offer you a line of credit for up to 80% of that amount. $49,600 at a rate of 8.2%. $49,000. Enough to cover David's debt with a little left over. All I had to do was sign papers putting my home at risk. The home I'd fought for, bled for. The physical representation of every sacrifice I'd made. What would the monthly payments be? Well, that depends on how much you draw and how quickly you pay it back. But if you were to take the full amount, you'd be looking at approximately $650 per month for the first 10 years, interest only. Then the principal would come due. $650. I made that in 2 shifts. It was doable. Barely. If I picked up extra shifts. If nothing went wrong. If I never got sick or had a car emergency or needed to replace my water heater. If I was willing to live on the edge of financial ruin to save my son. I need to think about it, I said. Of course. Take your time. When you're ready, just give us a call and we can start the application process. I hung up and sat there staring at the concrete wall of the parking garage. 23 years old, I'd been sitting in a different parking garage, pregnant and terrified, while Michael interviewed for the job that would eventually destroy our marriage. I remembered thinking that day that everything would work out, that we'd be okay as long as we had each other. I'd been so naive. My phone rang. David. I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened to the message. Mom, please call me back. They came to my apartment again. They're getting more aggressive. One of them grabbed my arm and said time was running out. Mom, I'm scared. I know you're angry. I know I don't deserve your help. But please. I don't know what else to do. The fear in his voice made my chest ache. He sounded like a child. Like the 7-year-old boy crying because his father didn't show up for their weekend visit. Helpless. Desperate for someone to make it better. I called my best friend, Sarah. We'd met 10 years ago at a support group for divorced women. She'd gone through her own nightmare with an ex who'd drained their accounts and left her with 3 kids and a mountain of debt. If anyone would understand what I was going through, it was her. He did what? She said after I explained the situation. $53,000 in gambling debts. To dangerous people. Jesus, Grace. What are you going to do? I don't know. The bank will give me a home equity line. I could get the money. But you'd be risking everything you've built. Yes. Can I be honest with you? Please. She took a deep breath. Don't do it. Blink. What? I know he's your son. I know you love him. But Grace, you can't set yourself on fire to keep him warm. You've already done that once. You spent 10 years rebuilding your life after Michael destroyed it. And now David is asking you to destroy it again to fix his mistakes. He's in danger, Sarah. These aren't the kind of people who accept payment plans. So he goes to the police. He reports what's happening. He faces the legal consequences of his choices. That's what adults do. They don't run to mommy to bail them out of every problem. You don't understand. If you don't help him, maybe he'll finally learn that actions have consequences. Grace, you're not helping him by enabling this behavior. You're teaching him that no matter how badly he screws up, no matter how much he lies, you'll always be there to clean up his mess. Just like his father taught him that abandonment is acceptable because someone will always take him back. Her words hit me like a slap. That's not fair. Maybe not. But it's true. You've spent David's entire life trying to compensate for Michael's absence. Trying to be both parents. Trying to give him everything he needs so he doesn't feel the hole his father left. But you can't fill that hole, Grace. Only David can do that. And he won't as long as you keep trying to do it for him. So what? I just let him get hurt. Let these people do whatever they're threatening to do. I'm saying you find another way. You don't have to choose between saving him and destroying yourself. There are other options. Like what? Like he gets a lawyer. Like he negotiates with these people. Like he takes out his own loans and deals with his own debt. Like he grows up and handles his own problems. I wanted to argue with her. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that she didn't understand, that this was different. But part of me knew she was right. Part of me recognized the pattern I'd been living for 17 years. The pattern of sacrifice. Of putting everyone else first. Of believing that my worth was measured by how much I could give. I need to go, I said. My break is almost over. Grace, I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm trying to be your friend. The kind of friend who tells you the truth even when it hurts. I know. Thank you. After I hung up, I sat there for 5 more minutes, trying to quiet the war raging inside my head. Every maternal instinct I had was screaming at me to save my child, to do whatever it took, to sacrifice whatever was necessary. But another voice, quieter but growing stronger, was asking a different question. What would I be saving him from? The consequences of his own choices. The uncomfortable reality that life doesn't provide safety nets. The truth that sometimes you have to face the mess you've made. My phone buzzed. Text from Michael. Have you decided? I can meet you to discuss options if that helps. I stared at that message and felt something inside me shift. He wanted to meet. To discuss options. Where was this collaborative co-parent 10 years ago when I needed him to discuss options about childcare or medical bills or how to help David cope with abandonment? I typed back. What happened to Rebecca's baby? I didn't expect him to answer. But he did. Her name is Emma. Is 8. Rebecca got full custody. I haven't seen her since she was 6. Do you send child support? When I can. Which isn't often. So he had another child out there. A daughter he'd abandoned just like he'd abandoned David. A little girl who was probably asking the same questions David had asked. Why doesn't Daddy love me? Why doesn't he come see me? What did I do wrong? The pattern was clear. Michael didn't stay. He didn't fight. When things got hard, he left. And now he was asking me to fight for the son he'd never bothered to fight for himself. Called David back. Mom, thank God. Did you? I'm not giving you the money. Silence. What? I said I'm not giving you the money. Can't. It's more than I have, and even if I could get it, I won't. Mom, you don't understand. These people are serious. They're not going to just forget about this. Then you need to go to the police. I can't go to the police. Do you know what happens to people who snitch on these guys? I know what happens to mothers who bankrupt themselves to enable their children's bad decisions. They end up alone and broke and resentful. I did that once for your father. I'm not doing it again for you. So that's it. You're just going to let me face this alone. You're not alone. You have a brain. You have options. You have resources. What you don't have is an easy way out where mommy fixes everything. That's done, David. I could hear him breathing hard on the other end of the line. When he spoke again, his voice was cold. You're just like him. Excuse me. Dad, you're just like him. When things get hard, you bail. You don't actually care about me. You just care about protecting yourself. The accusation was so absurd, so painfully unfair that I actually laughed. I spent 17 years putting you first. 17 years sacrificing everything to give you a good life. And now, the one time I say no, I'm the villain. You're supposed to be my mother. I am your mother. That's why I'm saying no. Because a real mother doesn't just rescue her child from every problem. A real mother teaches her child how to be strong, how to face consequences, how to stand on their own 2 feet. I failed you by not doing that sooner. I'm not failing you again. I hope you can live with yourself when something happens to me. Then he hung up. I sat there in my car, shaking. Part of me wanted to call him back immediately. Take it all back. To tell him I'd get the money somehow. That I'd save him like I always did. But I didn't. Instead, I wiped my eyes, straightened my scrubs, and went back inside to finish my shift. 'Cause Sarah was right. I couldn't set myself on fire to keep someone else warm. Not anymore. Not even for my son. The guilt came in waves. It would hit me at random moments throughout the day, stealing my breath and making my hands shake. I'd be checking a patient's blood pressure and suddenly see David's face. 7 years old, asking why Daddy didn't love us anymore. 17 years old, standing in his cap and gown, looking at me like I'd hung the moon. And now, at 19, his voice cold and angry, telling me I was just like his father. Maybe I was. 3 days after I refused to help him, Michael showed up at the hospital. I was walking to my car after a double shift, exhausted and empty, when I saw him leaning against the hood of a beat-up Toyota with a dented bumper. This was what his life had become. No more luxury sedan. No more expensive suits. Just a tired middle-aged man in jeans and a wrinkled shirt, waiting to ambush his ex-wife in a parking garage. "We need to talk," he said. "No, we don't." I walked past him toward my car. He followed. "Grace, please. Just hear me out. I've heard enough. From you. From David. From everyone who thinks it's my job to fix this. I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm asking you to help me understand why you won't." I stopped walking and turned to face him. The fluorescent lights of the garage cast harsh shadows across his face, making him look older than his 43 years. "You want to understand. Fine. I won't help because I can't keep being the person who sacrifices everything while everyone else takes. I won't help because David needs to learn that actions have consequences. I won't help because the last time I bankrupted myself trying to hold a family together, you walked out anyway. Is that clear enough? This is different. This is about David's safety. Is it? Or is this about you trying to assuage your guilt for being an absent father? You couldn't be bothered to show up for 17 years, but now that there's a crisis, suddenly you care." He flinched. "That's not fair. None of this is fair, Michael. It wasn't fair when you left us with nothing. It wasn't fair when I had to work 3 jobs while getting my nursing degree. It wasn't fair when David cried himself to sleep asking what he did to make you leave. Life isn't fair. And I'm done pretending it is. So you're just going to abandon him? Like you think I did?" The comparison made my blood boil. I spent 17 years showing up. Every single day. Every school play, every doctor's appointment, every moment he needed someone, I was there. You have no right to compare what I'm doing to what you did. Then why does it feel the same? His voice was quiet, broken. "I know I failed him. I know I don't get to have opinions about how you parent. But Grace, he's scared. Really scared. And whether you want to admit it or not, he needs you. He needs to grow up. He needs to face what he's done. He needs to stop running to other people to solve his problems. He's 19 years old. I was 21 when you left me with a 7-year-old and no way to support us. Nobody came to rescue me. I had to figure it out on my own. And look what it cost you." He gestured at me, at my scrubs and my exhausted face and my car that was 10 years old with a cracked windshield. "You're still paying for my mistakes. Still working yourself to death. Still alone. Is that really what you want for David? A life of struggle and sacrifice and resentment. Better than a life of running away when things get hard. Better than using people and discarding them when they stop being convenient. Better than becoming you." The words hung in the air between us like poison. Michael's face crumpled, and for a moment I thought he might cry. Part of me wanted him to feel even a fraction of the pain he'd caused. "I deserve that," he said finally. "I deserve all of it. But he doesn't. Then you help him. You figure it out. You be the parent for once. I have nothing, Grace. No money. No resources. No way to protect him. You're his only chance. No, I'm his easy way out. There's a difference." I got in my car and drove away, leaving him standing there in the parking garage looking lost and small. In my rearview mirror, I watched him get smaller and smaller until he disappeared completely, just like he'd done to us all those years ago. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every decision, every moment that had led me here. My phone sat on the nightstand silent. David hadn't called since our last conversation. Hadn't texted. Hadn't reached out at all. The silence was worse than anger. At 2 a.m, I got up and went to David's old room. I hadn't changed it much since he'd left for college. His posters were still on the walls. His books were still on the shelves. His childhood was frozen here, preserved like a museum exhibit. I sat on his bed and looked at the photos on his dresser. David at his first soccer game. David at his 8th grade graduation. David and me at the beach the summer before he left for school, both of us sunburned and happy, our arms around each other. When had that boy become a stranger? My phone rang. I grabbed it, hoping it was David calling to tell me he'd figured something out. That he was okay. That he forgave me. It was Sarah. "I know it's late," she said. But I couldn't sleep. I keep thinking about our conversation. About what I said. You were right. I needed to hear it. Maybe. But Grace, I'm worried about you. You sound, I don't know, empty. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're doing the right thing, but that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. I pressed my hand to my mouth, trying to hold back the sob building in my chest. Sarah, what if something happens to him? What if I could have prevented it and I chose not to? How do I live with that? The same way you lived with everything else. One day at a time. One breath at a time. You didn't create this situation. You're not responsible for fixing it. He's my son. I know. But he's also an adult who made choices. Bad choices. And now he has to deal with the consequences. That's not cruelty. That's life. It feels like cruelty. I know it does. But Grace, think about what you're teaching him if you bail him out. You're teaching him that someone will always save him. That he never has to face his own mistakes. Is that the lesson you want him to learn? I want him to be safe. Safe isn't the same as protected from consequences. You can want him to be safe and still require him to be responsible for himself. Those two things can coexist. After we hung up, I sat in David's room for another hour, surrounded by the ghost of who he used to be. The sweet little boy who used to bring me dandelions he'd picked from the yard. The teenager who used to hug me before bed even when his friends said he was too old for that. The young man who used to text me every day with updates about his life. All of them felt like different people now. Like I'd lost my son gradually over the years and hadn't noticed until it was too late. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Hayes. This is Detective Marcus Chen with the Boston Police Department. Your son David Hayes came into the station this evening to report a threat. I need to speak with you about his situation. Please call me at your earliest convenience. I stared at that message for a long time. David had gone to the police. On his own. Without me forcing him. Without me paving the way or holding his hand or solving his problems for him. He'd done it himself. I didn't know if that made me proud or terrified or relieved. Maybe all three at once. Maybe something else entirely that I didn't have a name for yet. Called the detective. He answered on the second ring, his voice calm and professional. Mrs. Hayes. Thank you for calling back so quickly. Is my son okay? He's safe, yes. Shaken up but safe. He came in tonight with information about an illegal gambling operation. We've been investigating these individuals for several months. Your son's testimony could be very helpful to our case. What happens now? Now we build a case. We bring these people in. Your son will need to testify eventually, but in the meantime we can offer him protection. We're taking the threats against him very seriously. Does he still owe them money? That's part of what we're investigating. If we can prove coercion and intimidation, which based on your son's account we can, then those debts aren't legally enforceable. They're the product of an illegal enterprise. Something in my chest loosened. Not relief exactly. More like the absence of the crushing weight that had been suffocating me for days. Thank you, I whispered. Your son is braver than he thinks. It takes courage to walk into a police station and admit you've made mistakes. Especially when you're scared. After I hung up, I sat there in the darkness of David's childhood room and felt something I hadn't felt in days. Oh, it was small, fragile, like a candle flame in the wind. But it was there. David hadn't needed me to save him. He'd saved himself. He'd made the hard choice. He'd faced his fear and done the right thing even though it was terrifying. Maybe I'd taught him something after all. Maybe all those years of showing up and fighting and refusing to give up had planted seeds I couldn't see. Maybe he was stronger than either of us realized. I texted him. Detective Chen called me. I'm proud of you. 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally. I'm sorry for what I said. You're nothing like Dad. You've never abandoned me. Not once. I was scared and I lashed out. I know. I understand. I should have come to you from the beginning. I should have trusted you. You can always trust me, even when I say no. Especially when I say no. Can I call you tomorrow? I want to explain everything. Yes. Call me when you're ready. I set down my phone and lay back on David's childhood bed, surrounded by the artifacts of his growing up. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. The refusal had nearly broken me. The guilt had dragged me to the bottom of a well so deep I couldn't see light. But something inside me still pulsed. Something stubborn and fierce and unbreakable. The part of me that survived Michael's betrayal. The part that rebuilt from nothing. The part that knew, even in my darkest moments, that I was worth more than what I could give to other people. That part was still alive. And it was teaching my son to find that same part in himself. David called me the next morning at 8. I was already awake, sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold while I stared out the window at the sunrise. Mom. Just that one word, and I could hear everything in it. Relief, shame, exhaustion, love. Hey baby. How are you? I'm okay. Scared but okay. The police have been amazing. They're taking this really seriously. He paused. I'm staying in a safe house for a few days while they bring the suspects in. They said it's just a precaution. Good. That's good. Mom, I need to say something. I need you to let me get it all out before you respond, okay? Okay. He took a shaky breath. I've been lying to you for months. Not just about school. About everything. I've been pretending to be someone I'm not because I was so terrified of disappointing you. You worked so hard to give me opportunities you never had. You sacrificed everything. And I felt like I had to be perfect to make it worth it. To justify all those years you suffered because of Dad. David, please let me finish. When I started struggling at school, I couldn't admit it. I couldn't tell you I was failing because that would mean I'd wasted your sacrifice. So I just spiraled. I quit going to class. I started hanging around with people who made me feel like I didn't have to be perfect. And when they offered me a way to make money, I jumped at it because I thought if I could just fix everything on my own, you'd never have to know I'd failed. I gripped my coffee mug so hard I thought it might shatter. But it got worse, he continued. Every decision I made was trying to cover up the last bad decision. Every lie led to another lie. And then I was in so deep I couldn't see a way out. So I went to Dad because I thought, I don't know what I thought. Maybe that he owed me something. Maybe that he'd understand because he's good at running away from problems. He called me because he couldn't help, I said quietly. Because he has nothing left. I know. And I'm glad he did, even though I was angry at the time. Because it forced me to face what I'd done. Your refusal to bail me out was the first honest moment I'd had in months. You didn't try to fix it. You didn't try to make it easier. You just told me the truth. That I had to face this myself. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, I whispered. Saying no to you. It was the best thing you could have done for me. Because it made me realize I was strong enough to handle it. That I didn't need to be saved. I needed to save myself. Tears were streaming down my face. I didn't try to stop them. I'm so proud of you, I said. Going to the police took real courage. I learned it from you. You've been facing impossible things my whole life. You never gave up. You never asked anyone to rescue you. You just kept going. And I realized that's what I needed to do too. We talked for another hour. He told me everything. The classes he'd failed. The friends who'd led him into the gambling ring. The moment he realized he was in over his head. The nights he couldn't sleep because of the threats. The shame that had kept him from asking for help sooner. I listened without judgment. Without trying to fix anything. Just listening. Just being present. When we finally hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and felt something shift inside me. something fundamental and irreversible. For 17 years, I defined myself by what I could do for David, how much I could sacrifice, how well I could protect him, how completely I could compensate for Michael's absence. But that wasn't motherhood. That was martyrdom. Real motherhood meant letting him fall, letting him face consequences, letting him discover his own strength, and trusting that all the years I'd spent showing up and being present had given him the tools he needed to survive. I'd been so afraid of failing him the way Michael had that I'd almost failed him in a different way. By never letting him be responsible for himself. By making him believe his worth was measured by whether he met my expectations. But he didn't need to be perfect. He just needed to be honest, to be brave, to be human. And he was. Despite everything, he was. I stood up from the table and walked to my bedroom. In the back of my closet, tucked in a box I hadn't opened in years, were the remnants of my marriage to Michael. Our wedding album, cards he'd given me, letters he'd written when we were dating. I'd kept them all, unable to throw them away even though they hurt to look at. I pulled out the box and carried it downstairs. Then I took it to the backyard, to the fire pit Michael had built the summer before he left. It was overgrown with weeds now, unused for years. I cleared out the debris and arranged the photos and letters in the center. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about anger. It was about release. I lit a match and watched the paper curl and blacken. The photos of us smiling on our wedding day. The love letters promising forever. The birthday card signed, "Love Always." All of it turning to ash. As I watched it burn, I thought about the woman I'd been when Michael left. 28 years old. Terrified. Broken. Believing her worth was tied to whether a man chose to stay. That woman was gone. She'd died slowly over the past 10 years, burned away by struggle and survival, and the gradual realization that she didn't need anyone to complete her. She was whole on her own. The fire burned down to embers. I stood there watching the smoke rise into the morning sky, and I made a silent decision. I was done living my life as a reaction to Michael's betrayal. Done defining myself by what he'd taken from me. Done teaching David through my actions that sacrifice was the same as love. From now on, I would live intentionally. Not in service to anyone else's expectations or needs or failures, but in service to the woman I wanted to become. I went back inside and pulled out a notebook I'd bought years ago but never used. The first page was blank, waiting. I sat down at the kitchen table and began to write. Things I want for myself. It felt selfish even writing the words. But I forced myself to continue. 1. To go back to school and get my master's degree. 2. To travel somewhere I've never been. 3. To have a relationship built on partnership, not need. 4. To spend time on hobbies that have nothing to do with being useful. 5. To forgive Michael, not for him, but to free myself from carrying his ghost. I stared at that last one for a long time. Forgiveness. The word felt dangerous. Like if I forgave him, I was saying what he did was okay. That it didn't matter. But that wasn't what forgiveness meant. Forgiveness meant I was done letting his choices define my present. Done carrying the weight of his betrayal into every new day. Done using his failure as an excuse to never risk being vulnerable again. Forgiveness meant freedom. My freedom. My phone rang. Michael. I almost didn't answer. But something in me had shifted. The anger that had been burning in my chest for a decade had cooled to something manageable. Something I could hold without it consuming me. Hello, Grace. I heard David went to the police. Is he okay? He's fine. They're protecting him while they build their case. Thank God. Relief flooded his voice. I've been going crazy not knowing. He won't return my calls. He's processing a lot right now. Give him time. Oz, did you help him? Did you give him money? No, I didn't. But he's okay. They're not going after him. The police are handling it. David's cooperating with their investigation. The debts aren't legally enforceable since they're part of a criminal enterprise. So you were right. about making him handle it himself. I didn't say anything. Grace, I'm sorry. For showing up at your door. For asking you to fix my failures as a father. For putting that burden on you. You've carried enough. Yes, I said simply. I have. I don't expect you to forgive me. For any of it. But I want you to know that leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life. Rebecca didn't make me feel alive. She made me feel distracted. And when the distraction wore off, I was left with the realization that I'd destroyed something real for something fake. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to hear it. Because you've spent 10 years believing you weren't enough, and that's not true. You were always enough. I was the one who wasn't. I looked out the window at the fire pit, at the ash that used to be our history. Thank you for saying that, I said. But Michael, it doesn't change anything. We're not going to reconcile. We're not going to be friends. We're just two people who share a son and a painful history. I know. I just needed you to know the truth. That it was never about you. It was always about me. After I hung up, I sat with those words. It was never about you. For 10 years, I'd believed I'd failed somehow. That if I'd been prettier, more interesting, more exciting, he would have stayed. That his betrayal was proof of my inadequacy. But it wasn't. It was proof of his. And finally, I believed that. I went to my laptop and pulled up the website for the local university. They had an online master's program in nursing education. Flexible scheduling for working professionals. Financial aid available. I started filling out the application. This was my turning point. Not dramatic. Not visible to anyone else. Just a quiet decision to stop surviving and start living. To stop defining myself by what I'd lost and start building what I wanted. Choose myself. For the first time in 17 years, I was choosing myself. And it felt like coming home. The acceptance letter came 6 weeks later. I was working a night shift when the email arrived, and I had to read it 3 times before I believed it was real. Congratulations! You have been accepted into the Master of Science in Nursing Education program. I sat in the break room at 3 in the morning with tears streaming down my face, my phone clutched in my shaking hands. Sarah found me there 20 minutes later. What's wrong? She rushed over, grabbing my shoulders. What happened? I couldn't speak. I just turned my phone toward her. She read the email and then she was crying too. Grace. Oh my God. You did it. I did it, I whispered. That was the first victory. Quiet. The reconstruction didn't happen overnight. It happened in moments. In tiny decisions that accumulated like grains of sand, eventually forming something solid enough to stand on. I cut back my hours at the hospital. Not drastically. I still needed to pay my bills. But instead of working 60-hour weeks, I worked 45. Those 15 hours became sacred. They belonged to me and my education and my future. I started classes in January. Online in the evenings after my shifts. I'd come home exhausted, make a simple dinner, and sit at my kitchen table with my laptop open and my notes spread around me. Educational theory. Curriculum development. Assessment strategies. It was hard. God, it was hard. My brain felt rusty after so many years away from academic work. I'd read the same paragraph 5 times before it made sense. I'd fall asleep over my textbooks and wake up at 2 in the morning with my cheek pressed against the keyboard. But I kept going. David came home in March. The trial had concluded. The gambling ring had been shut down. He'd testified, brave and clear-eyed, and the men who'd threatened him were facing federal charges. His debt had been erased, declared void as the proceeds of criminal activity. He'd enrolled in community college. Not Boston University, something smaller, more manageable. He was living with a roommate in an apartment he was paying for himself with money from his job at a coffee shop. I'm starting over, he told me the day he came home to visit. Doing it right this time. We sat on my back porch drinking iced tea, and I watched him talk about his psychology class and his philosophy professor and the girl he'd met who made him laugh. He looked lighter, younger. like he'd set down a weight he didn't know he'd been carrying. "I'm proud of you," I said. "I'm proud of you too, Mom. Sarah told me you went back to school. Sarah talks too much. Sarah tells the truth." He smiled. "You're amazing, you know that. You always have been. I just couldn't see it before because I was so busy using you as my safety net. You don't need a safety net anymore." "No, but I still need a mother. One who lives her own life and doesn't just exist to serve mine." Those words settled into my chest like a blessing. In April, I planted a garden. Something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. I bought seeds and soil and spent my Saturday afternoons on my hands and knees in the dirt, coaxing tomatoes and peppers and herbs to life. There was something healing about it. About putting things in the ground and trusting them to grow. About tending them patiently and watching them transform from nothing into something beautiful and nourishing. My neighbor Robert noticed. He was a widower in his 60s who'd lived next door for 3 years. We'd always been friendly, exchanging waves and small talk about the weather, but nothing more. "Your garden looks great," he said one Saturday, leaning over the fence that separated our yards. "Thanks. It's my first attempt. I'm learning as I go. Best way to do it. My wife used to garden. She'd have loved to meet someone else who appreciated it. I'm sorry for your loss. 3 years now. Some days it feels like yesterday. Others it feels like a lifetime." He paused. "I'm making too much lasagna tonight. Would you like some?" I always forget to adjust the recipe for one person. Almost said no. Almost fell back into the pattern of keeping everyone at arm's length. But something stopped me. "I'd love that. Thank you." That lasagna turned into dinner on his porch, which turned into him helping me stake my tomato plants, which turned into coffee on Sunday mornings. Nothing romantic, just companionship. Two people who'd been through loss, learning to be okay with not being alone. I finished my first semester with a 3.8 GPA. When I saw my grades posted, I actually screamed. Then I called Sarah, who screamed with me. "I knew you could do it," she said. "I didn't. I thought I was too old, too tired, too far behind. You were never any of those things. You were just scared." She was right. I'd been terrified. Terrified of trying and failing. Of proving that the voice in my head that said I wasn't smart enough or good enough was right. But I'd done it anyway. And the doing had proved the voice wrong. In June, I went to the beach. Alone. I took a long weekend, drove 3 hours to the coast, and checked into a small bed and breakfast overlooking the ocean. I spent 3 days reading books that had nothing to do with school or work. Walking on the beach. Sitting on the porch watching the sunset. Not thinking about what anyone else needed. Just being. It was the first vacation I'd taken in 10 years that wasn't about David or obligations or making memories for someone else. It was just for me. I took a photo of the sunset on the last evening. Pink and orange and purple streaking across the sky, the ocean dark and vast beneath it. I posted it on social media with the caption, "Learning what peace feels like." David commented, "You deserve it, Mom." Michael commented too, "Beautiful." I stared at that comment for a long time. Part of me wanted to delete it, to maintain the boundaries I'd set. But another part recognized it for what it was. An olive branch. Not asking for anything. Just acknowledging a moment. I left it there. In July, I got promoted at work. My supervisor called me into her office, and I thought I was in trouble for something. Instead, she offered me a position as a clinical educator. More money. Better hours. Work that aligned with what I was studying. "You've been an exemplary nurse for 6 years," she said. "You're patient with the new hires. You're thorough. You're exactly what we need in this role." I don't know what to say. Say yes. Yes. God, yes. Thank you. I called David from my car in the parking lot. "Mom, that's incredible. I'm so happy for you." "I'm happy for me too," I said, and realized I meant it. I was genuinely, thoroughly happy. Not just relieved or satisfied or okay. Actually happy. When had that happened? When had the weight I'd been carrying for so long become light enough to set down? I started running in August. Just around my neighborhood at first. Mile, then 2, then 3. I was slow. Ridiculously slow. But I didn't care. It wasn't about speed or competition or proving anything. It was about moving my body and clearing my mind and feeling strong. Robert started running with me sometimes. We'd jog the loop around the park, talking about everything and nothing. His late wife, my ex-husband, our kids, our dreams, the mundane details of our days. You know, he said one morning as we stretched after a run, I haven't felt this comfortable with someone in a long time. Me neither. Would you like to have dinner with me sometime? A real dinner. Not just leftover lasagna. I looked at him. Really looked at him. Gray hair. Kind eyes. Laugh lines around his mouth. A man who'd loved and lost and was brave enough to try again. I'd like that, I said. That dinner turned into another. And another. Nothing rush. Nothing desperate. Just two middle-aged people who'd survived their share of pain, learning to trust again. I finished the year with a 3.9 GPA. I'd lost 15 pounds from running. I had a job I loved and a master's program I was excelling in and a man who looked at me like I was worth treasuring. I had a son who was thriving on his own terms. I had a garden full of tomatoes and a house that felt like home instead of a monument to loss. I had a life. Not the life I'd planned when I was 23 and believed in forever. Not the fairy tale I'd imagined when Michael and I got married. But something better. Something real. Something I'd built with my own hands from the ruins of what came before. The reconstruction had taken time. Patience. Faith that each small step mattered even when I couldn't see where they were leading. But here I was. Standing on solid ground. Looking forward instead of back. One evening in December, I sat on my back porch wrapped in a blanket, drinking hot chocolate and watching the first snow of winter fall. My phone buzzed. Text from David. I got an A on my psychology final. My professor wants me to apply to the research program next semester. I smiled and typed back. That's wonderful, baby. I'm so proud of you. Couldn't have done it without your example. You taught me that it's never too late to start over. To become who you're meant to be. I set down my phone and looked up at the sky. Snow falling soft and silent. The world quiet and clean and full of possibility. This was what freedom felt like. Not the absence of struggle. Not the end of pain. But the knowledge that I could survive it. That I could fall and get back up. That I could lose everything and still find a way to build something beautiful. I'd spent so many years believing my worth was measured by what I could give to others. How much I could sacrifice. How completely I could erase myself in service to someone else's needs. But that wasn't strength. That was fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of being unneeded. Fear of discovering that without someone to save, I was nothing. The reconstruction had taught me differently. I was something. I was someone. All on my own. Complete without needing to be completed. Whole without needing to be fixed. And that knowledge, hard-won and battle-tested, was worth more than any relationship I'd sacrificed myself to maintain. I went inside, filled out my course registration for spring semester, and went to bed. Tomorrow was Monday. I'd go to work, come home, study, run, live, and it would be enough. I would be enough. Already was. The phone call came on a Tuesday in February, 18 months after Michael had first knocked on my door. I was in the middle of writing a paper for my leadership in nursing education class when my phone lit up with David's name. Hey honey. What's up? Mom. His voice was strange. Can you talk? I closed my laptop immediately. Of course. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong exactly. Just, Dad called me. My stomach clenched. Michael and David had been in sporadic contact over the past year. Awkward phone calls every few weeks. A lunch when Michael passed through town. Nothing deep. Nothing that resembled the relationship they should have had. But it was something. Okay. What did he say? He's sick, Mom. Really sick. He has stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors are saying 6 months, maybe less. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of my desk. Are you still there? David asked. I'm here. When did he find out? 3 weeks ago. He didn't want to tell me until he knew for sure. Until he'd gotten a second opinion. But it's the same diagnosis. There's no cure. They can try to slow it down, but he's dying. Yes. I didn't know what to feel. Part of me remembered the man I'd loved. The father of my child. The person who'd promised me forever and then took it back. Another part of me just felt numb. Like this was happening to someone else. Someone whose life Michael still had the power to disrupt. How are you doing with this? Yes. I don't know. Barely know him, Mom. He's been absent for most of my life. But he's still my father. And now he's dying, and I feel like I'm supposed to feel something bigger than what I actually feel. What do you feel? Sad. Confused. A little angry if I'm honest. Like now he wants a relationship. Now that he's dying. Where was this urgency when I was 7 and waiting by the window for him to show up? Those are all valid feelings. He wants to see me. To spend time together before. He's moving back here. He can't afford his apartment in the city anymore, and he needs help. He asked if he could stay with me for a while. David, that's a lot. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. But Mom, he's dying. And he's alone. Rebecca won't talk to him. Emma doesn't even know who he is. His parents are both dead. He has no one. He made those choices. I know. But that doesn't mean I want him to die alone in some facility surrounded by strangers. Closed my eyes. This was exactly the kind of thing I'd warned him about. Sacrificing himself for someone who'd never sacrificed anything for him. But David was an adult. He got to make his own choices. Even bad ones. What do you need from me? Yes. I need to know you're okay with this. I know seeing him around again is going to be hard for you. I don't want to hurt you. Baby, this isn't about me. This is about you and your father. You do what feels right. But it is about you. He asked about you. He wants to see you. My breath caught. Absolutely not. Mom. No, David. I've worked too hard to rebuild my life. I'm not going to let him back in, even to say goodbye. That sounds cruel, I know. But I have to protect myself. He's not asking to get back together. He just wants to apologize. To make peace before he dies. He can write me a letter. I'll read it after he's gone. Silence on the other end of the line. Then, you really hate him that much? Did I? Hate was such an active emotion. It required energy and attention and constant tending. I'd spent years hating Michael. Replaying his betrayal. Imagining different versions of confrontations where I said all the right things and made him understand what he'd done. But somewhere along the way I'd stopped. The hate had cooled to indifference. He'd become someone I used to know. Someone who'd hurt me badly but no longer had the power to touch my present. I don't hate him, I said finally. But I don't want him in my life either. Not even for closure. Closed that door myself. I don't need his permission or his apology to move on. I already have. Okay. Understand. I'll tell him. After we hung up, I sat at my desk for a long time, staring at nothing. Michael was dying. The man who'd shaped so much of my life, who'd given me my son and broken my heart and taught me what I was capable of surviving, was dying. I waited for the grief to come. The sadness. Something. But all I felt was a distant echo of what used to be. Like hearing thunder from a storm that was already past. 2 weeks later I saw him. Not intentionally. I was at the grocery store, reaching for a box of pasta, when I heard a familiar cough. I turned and there he was, 3 feet away, looking at the same shelf with confusion on his face. He'd lost at least 40 pounds. His clothes hung on him like they belonged to someone else. His skin had a grayish tint. His eyes, once sharp and confident, were sunken and tired. He looked up and saw me. Froze. Grace. Michael. We stood there in the pasta aisle like strangers who used to be everything to each other. "You look good," he said finally. "Healthy. Happy. Thank you. David told me you're in school. Getting your master's. I'm proud of you. I don't need you to be proud of me." He flinched. "I know. Sorry. I don't have any right to. I'm sorry." People were moving around us, reaching for boxes and jars, living their normal lives while we stood in the wreckage of ours. "David told me you're staying with him," I said. "Just for a few weeks while I figure out something more permanent. He's been very kind. More kind than I deserve." "Yes, he has. Grace, I know you don't want to talk to me." David made that clear. "But can I just say one thing? Please. You don't have to respond. You don't have to forgive me. Just let me say it." Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to walk away, to protect the peace I'd worked so hard to build. But something in his eyes, some desperate need to be heard before he disappeared forever, made me stay. "One thing," I said. "Leaving you was the worst mistake of my life. Not because I ended up alone. Not because I'm dying with nothing to show for the last 10 years. But because I destroyed something real. You loved me completely, faithfully. And I threw that away for something that felt exciting but meant nothing. I've spent every day since trying to understand why. Trying to figure out what was broken in me that made me do that. And the truth is, I still don't know. But I know it was never about you. You were always enough. More than enough. I was just too stupid and selfish to see it." His voice cracked on the last words. Tears were running down his face. I stood there looking at this dying man who used to be my husband, and I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No vindication. No forgiveness. Just a vast, empty space where intense feeling used to be. "Thank you for telling me that," I said quietly. "I hope you find peace, Michael. I really do." Then I turned and walked away, leaving him standing in the pasta aisle with his apology hanging in the air between us. I made it to my car before I started shaking. Not crying. Just shaking, like my body couldn't decide what to do with the adrenaline flooding my system. I sat there gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe, trying to understand what I was feeling. Robert called. We'd been seeing each other for 8 months now. Nothing official. No labels. Just two people enjoying each other's company without demanding more than the other could give. "Hey," I said, my voice unsteady. "What's wrong? How do you always know? I'm learning to read you. What happened?" Told him. About Michael. About the grocery store. About the apology I didn't ask for and didn't want but couldn't refuse to hear. "How do you feel?" Robert asked. "I don't know." Empty. Relieved. Like I've been waiting for this confrontation for 10 years. And now that it's happened, it means less than I thought it would. That's called healing, Grace. That's what it looks like when someone who used to destroy you doesn't have that power anymore. It feels anticlimactic. Most healing does. We expect these big dramatic moments of closure, but usually it's just quiet. Just waking up one day and realizing the person who hurt you is just a person. Nothing more. Nothing less. After we hung up, I drove home and found David waiting on my porch. He looked worried. "Dad texted me. He said he saw you." "He did. Are you okay?" "Yes. Surprisingly, I am." We went inside and I made tea while David sat at my kitchen table. The same table where I'd made him breakfast every morning before school. The same table where I'd cried after his father left. The same table where I'd filled out my graduate school application. "He's getting worse quickly," David said. "The doctor said maybe 3 months now instead of 6. "I'm sorry, honey. I know this is hard for you." "It is. But you know what's weird? I'm not sad about losing him. I'm sad about never really having him in the first place. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense. I keep thinking about what you said last year. About not saving me from my own mistakes. About letting me face consequences. I was so angry at you then. But Mom, you were right. If you'd given me that money, if you just fixed everything like I wanted, I wouldn't have learned anything. I'd still be that scared kid running from his problems." You were never that kid. You were always brave. You just needed to remember it. I learned it from you. From watching you survive everything Dad put you through. From seeing you rebuild when everyone would have understood if you'd just given up. He reached across the table and took my hand. I need to tell you something, he said. When I'm with Dad now, listening to him talk about his regrets, about all the things he wishes he'd done differently, I realize something. He's not dying of cancer. I mean, he is, but that's not what's killing him. He's dying of regret. Of knowing he wasted his life chasing things that didn't matter and abandoning the things that did. And I don't want to be him, Mom. I don't want to get to the end and realize I missed everything important because I was too scared or too selfish or too stupid to hold on. You won't be. You're nothing like him. I'm exactly like him. Or I would have been if you hadn't stopped me. If you hadn't loved me enough to let me fall. We sat there in my kitchen as the afternoon light faded to evening, and I understood something I hadn't before. Michael's return wasn't about him. It wasn't about me. It was about David. About him seeing firsthand what happens when you run from responsibility. When you choose easy over right. When you believe someone will always be there to catch you. Michael's death would be David's final lesson from a father who'd taught him mostly through absence. And I could give him that. I could let him be present for this ending without making it about my pain. But I didn't have to be there too. My phone rang at midnight. David. Mom, I'm at the hospital. Dad collapsed. They're saying it's time. He's asking for you. Please. I know it's too much to ask, but please. I don't want to do this alone. And there it was. The moment I'd been dreading. The choice between protecting myself and supporting my son through something impossible. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said. The hospital was quiet at this hour. Just the hum of machines and the soft squeak of nurses' shoes on linoleum. I knew this place intimately. I'd worked here for 6 years. But tonight I was walking these halls as a visitor, not a caregiver. David was waiting outside Michael's room. His eyes were red and swollen. Thank you for coming, he whispered, pulling me into a hug. I know this is the last place you want to be. I'm not here for him. I'm here for you. He's barely conscious. The morphine is pretty heavy. But he keeps saying your name. I took a deep breath and pushed open the door. The man in the bed bore little resemblance to the Michael I'd known. He was skeletal. His breathing was labored, rattling in his chest. Machines beeped rhythmically, tracking a life that was slipping away by the minute. His eyes opened when he heard us enter. It took him a moment to focus, to recognize me standing at the foot of his bed. Grace, he breathed. You came. David needed me. Always so strong. Always doing the right thing. He coughed, wincing in pain. I never deserved you. No, you didn't. David shifted uncomfortably beside me. But I'd learned in the last 18 months that honesty, even uncomfortable honesty, was better than false comfort. Michael was dying. There was no point in pretending our history was anything other than what it was. I wrote you a letter, Michael said. In the drawer. David, can you? David pulled out an envelope and handed it to me. My name was written on the front in handwriting that was barely recognizable. Cheeky. You don't have to read it now, Michael said. Or ever. But I needed to write it. To try to explain. There's nothing to explain, Michael. You made your choices. Made mine. We both have to live with the consequences. You lived with them so much better than I did. A tear slid down his hollow cheek. Look at you. You're thriving. And look at me. Dying alone because I pushed away everyone who ever mattered. You're not alone. David is here. Because he's a better person than I ever was. He got that from you. I looked at my son, standing beside his father's deathbed with compassion in his eyes despite everything. Michael was right. David was better than both of us. He'd taken the broken pieces we'd left him with and built something whole. Dad, David said quietly, can I have a minute alone with Mom? Michael nodded, his eyes already closing. David led me out into the hallway. We stood by a window overlooking the parking lot, the city lights twinkling in the distance. "I need to tell you something," David said. "Something Dad told me a few weeks ago." "Okay." "He said the day he left you, the day he walked out with those suitcases, he got in his car and started driving to Rebecca's apartment. But halfway there he pulled over. And he sat in that car for 2 hours trying to decide if he was making the biggest mistake of his life." I felt something twist in my chest. "He knew," David continued. "Even then, he knew he was destroying something real. But he convinced himself that the doubt meant he was making the right choice. That if he was truly happy with you, he wouldn't be tempted by someone else. So he kept driving." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because he spent the next 10 years realizing he was wrong. That doubt isn't the opposite of love. That being tempted doesn't mean you're in the wrong relationship. Just means you're human." And he threw away his humanity trying to chase some fantasy of what happiness should feel like. I looked through the window at my reflection. A 43-year-old woman with gray starting to thread through her hair. Lines around her eyes from smiling and crying and surviving. A woman who'd been broken and rebuilt herself into something stronger. "Do you know what Rebecca told him when she left?" David asked. "She said he was a disappointment. That she'd thought he was ambitious and exciting, but he was just a middle-aged man having a midlife crisis. She said she'd wasted her best years on someone who wasn't worth it." "That's cruel. That's karma." I turned to look at my son. "Are you saying I should feel satisfaction in his suffering?" "No. I'm saying you should recognize that the universe has a way of balancing things. Dad destroyed his family chasing someone who didn't value him. And he lost everything. His business, his second family, his health, his dignity. And meanwhile you built a beautiful life. You have a career you love. You're getting your master's degree. You have Robert. You have me actually present instead of just physically here. You won everything that matters. His death isn't my victory, David. No, but your life is. Don't you see? The best revenge wasn't you destroying him. It was you succeeding without him. It was you proving that you didn't need him to be whole. That his leaving didn't break you. It freed you. I'd never thought about it that way. I'd spent so many years focused on survival that I hadn't stopped to recognize what I'd actually built. Not despite Michael leaving, but because of it. His betrayal had forced me to discover strength I didn't know I had. To develop skills and confidence and independence I might never have found if I'd stayed safely inside our marriage. He knows that too, David said. That's what's eating him up in there. Not the cancer. The knowledge that the woman he left behind became everything he couldn't be. Strong, resilient, genuinely happy. We went back into the room. Michael's breathing had gotten worse. More labored. The nurse had been in and adjusted his morphine. "Not long now," she whispered to me on her way out. I sat in the chair beside his bed. David sat on the other side. We flanked this dying man like bookends, holding space for an ending that was long overdue. Michael's eyes fluttered open. He looked at me with surprising clarity. "I see him, you know," he said. "In David. The best parts of both of us. Your strength. Your integrity, maybe a little of my ambition, but tempered by your wisdom." "He's his own person," I said. "Yes, thank God. Better than either of us could have been alone." He paused, struggling for breath. "Grace, I need to ask you something. And I need you to be honest." "Okay. Did you ever forgive me? Really forgive me?" I thought about that question, turned it over in my mind like a stone, examining it from every angle. Forgiveness. That word that people threw around like it was simple. Like you could just decide to forgive someone and it would happen. But forgiveness wasn't a decision. It was a process. A daily choice to stop carrying someone else's guilt. To stop letting their choices define your present. "I forgive the man you were," I said finally. "The scared, selfish person who made terrible choices. I forgive him because holding on to that anger was only hurting me. But I don't forgive what you did. The abandonment. The betrayal. The years David spent wondering why his father didn't love him enough to stay. Some things can't be forgiven. They can only be survived. That's fair, he whispered. But Michael, I hope you forgive yourself. I hope you find peace with what you did. Not because you deserve it, but because dying in anguish helps no one. He nodded slowly, tears streaming down his face into the pillow. We sat with him as the night stretched into early morning. David held one hand. I held the other. Not out of love. Not out of obligation. But out of a basic human decency that transcended our history. At 4:17 in the morning, Michael took his last breath. The machines went flat. The nurse came in to confirm what we already knew. He was gone. David collapsed into my arms, sobbing. Not for the father he'd lost, but for the father he'd never really had. For the relationship that could have been if Michael had been brave enough to stay. I held my son and let him grieve, and I felt relief. Not joy. Not vindication. Just a deep, profound relief that this chapter was finally, truly closed. After the paperwork was done and the arrangements were made, David and I walked out into the early morning light. The sun was rising, painting the sky pink and gold. What happens now? David asked. Now we go home. We have breakfast. We live our lives. Just like that. Just like that. He looked at me with wonder in his eyes. How are you so calm? So at peace with all of this? Because I learned something these past 10 years. The best revenge isn't destruction. It's not making someone suffer for what they did to you. The best revenge is building a life so full and so beautiful that their absence becomes irrelevant. Your father left me with nothing. And I built everything. That's justice. That's closure. We drove home in comfortable silence. When I pulled into my driveway, Robert was sitting on my front porch with 2 cups of coffee. I figured you might need this, he said. I took the coffee and sat beside him, David on my other side. The 3 of us sat there watching the neighborhood wake up. Dogs being walked, people leaving for work. Life continuing like it always did. Indifferent to personal tragedy. You okay? Robert asked. I'm okay. And I was. Michael's death had closed a door I'd thought was already closed. His apology had given me nothing I didn't already have. His regrets had changed nothing about my present. I'd survived him. I'd thrived without him. And now I'd buried him. The justice wasn't in his suffering. It was in my liberation. In the knowledge that I'd taken the worst thing that ever happened to me and transformed it into the catalyst for my best life. That was the revenge. That was the victory. Not his death. My life. I didn't read Michael's letter for 3 weeks. It sat in my desk drawer, still sealed, while I went about my life. Work. School. Running. Dinners with Robert. Sunday calls with David. Part of me wanted to throw it away unread. What could he possibly say that would matter now? He was gone. His apologies were dust. His regrets couldn't change anything. But another part of me was curious. Not about his words, but about my reaction to them. About whether reading them would disturb the peace I'd built. Whether his voice, even from beyond the grave, still had the power to hurt me. It was a Sunday afternoon in late March when I finally opened it. Spring was making itself known through my windows. The garden I'd planted last year was coming back to life. Tulips pushing through the soil. The promise of renewal everywhere. I made tea, sat at my kitchen table, and carefully opened the envelope. The handwriting was barely legible, written by a man whose hands shook with illness and morphine. But I read every word slowly, carefully, giving him one final moment of my attention. Grace, it began. I don't know how to start this letter. I've written it a dozen times in my head over the past 10 years, but now that I'm actually putting pen to paper, knowing these might be the last words I ever say to you, I find myself at a loss. I could picture him in David's apartment, struggling to find the right words. Always so articulate in life, reduced to stammering confessions at the end. I want to explain why I left, but the truth is I can't. Not in any way that makes sense. People always want neat narratives, clear reasons. He was unhappy, or she didn't understand him, or they grew apart. But none of that is true. You made me happy. You understood me better than I understood myself. We never grew apart. Chose to leave. And I can't explain why except to say that I was broken in ways I didn't recognize. I was chasing something that didn't exist. Some version of myself that I thought I'd find in someone else's bed, someone else's life. And by the time I realized what I'd done, it was too late. You'd moved on. And you should have. God, you should have. My tea had gone cold. I wrapped my hands around the mug anyway, needing something to hold. I want you to know that watching you rebuild your life has been the most humbling experience of my existence. I've watched from a distance through David, through mutual acquaintances, through the occasional social media post. And every time I hear about another accomplishment, another milestone, another moment of joy in your life, I feel this strange mixture of pride and devastation. Pride because you're thriving. Devastation because I could have been part of it. Should have been part of it. But I forfeited that right. I thought about all the moments he was referencing. My nursing degree. My first day at the hospital. David's high school graduation. My acceptance into the master's program. All the victories I'd celebrated without him. All the struggles I'd survived alone. Rebecca used to get angry when I talked about you. She'd say I was living in the past. That I needed to let you go. But I couldn't. Not because I was still in love with you, though part of me probably always will be. But because you represented everything I'd destroyed. Every choice I'd made wrong. Every person I'd hurt in service to my own selfishness. You were my conscience made flesh, walking around succeeding where I'd failed, thriving where I'd withered. The letter went on for 3 more pages, detailing his regrets, his failed business, Rebecca leaving him, his daughter Emma, who he'd abandoned just like he'd abandoned David, the pattern repeating because he'd never learned the lesson the first time. I know you don't owe me forgiveness. I know that what I did to you and David is unforgivable. But I need to tell you that you were right. About everything. You were right that I was running. You were right that I was selfish. You were right that I would regret it. And I have. Every single day. I've lived with the ghost of what we could have been. And it's been a far harsher punishment than anything you could have inflicted on me. I reached the final paragraph with tears streaming down my face. Not for him. For the young woman I used to be who'd believed in forever. For the family we could have been if he'd been brave enough to stay and work through his crisis instead of running from it. If I could give you anything, it would be this. The knowledge that you were always enough. More than enough. Perfect, in fact, in your imperfection. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. And I was too blind to see it until it was too late. I'm sorry, Grace. For all of it. For the pain. For the abandonment. For the years I stole from you. I'm so deeply, profoundly sorry. I hope you found happiness. I hope you found someone who treasures what I threw away. I hope you've forgiven yourself for my failures. And if you can't forgive me, I understand. I can't forgive myself either. But know that you were loved. Imperfectly and selfishly, but loved nonetheless. And you deserved so much better. Yours, Michael. I set down the letter and sat in my kitchen as the afternoon light faded to evening. And I cried. Not for Michael. Not for what we'd lost. But for the futility of it all. The waste. 2 people who'd loved each other once. Destroyed by one person's fear and the other person's inability to see it coming. But as I sat there crying, I realized something profound. This letter, these words, they didn't change anything. They didn't make the past hurt less. They didn't give me anything I didn't already have. Because forgiveness wasn't something Michael could give me or take away. It was something I'd been giving myself little by little, every day for the past 10 years. Every time I got up after falling down. Every time I chose myself instead of sacrificing for someone else. Every time I said no to what would destroy me and yes to what would build me. That was forgiveness. Not of him. Of myself. For loving someone who couldn't love me back. For staying too long. For believing in forever when forever was just a word. I picked up the phone and called David. "I read the letter," I said. And I understand now. Not what he did. That's still incomprehensible. But who he was. A broken person who broke other people because he didn't know how to fix himself. Does it help? Knowing that? Yes, because it means I can finally let go completely. I've been carrying this story about our marriage. About how I failed somehow. About how if I'd just been better, more interesting, more something, he would have stayed. But that was never true. It was never about me. It was always about him. Mom, you know what the last thing Dad said to me was? Before he lost consciousness. What? He said, "Be better than me. Love someone the way your mother loved me. And never, ever let them go." He knew. At the end, he finally knew what he'd lost. We talked for a while longer, and then I hung up and sat with the silence of my house. My beautiful, peaceful house that I'd bought with my own money. That I'd filled with furniture I'd chosen. That represented everything I'd built from the ashes of what Michael had burned down. And I understood the lesson. The real lesson. Not the obvious one about betrayal and survival. But the deeper one about identity and worth. 4 years, I'd let Michael's leaving define me. I was the abandoned wife. The betrayed woman. The single mother struggling against impossible odds. Those things were true. But they weren't the whole truth. They weren't even the most important truth. The most important truth was this. I was Grace. A woman who loved deeply and fought fiercely and rebuilt beautifully. A woman who'd been broken and had used those broken pieces to construct something stronger than the original. A woman who'd learned that the opposite of love wasn't hate. It was indifference. And that forgiveness wasn't about the person who hurt you. It was about refusing to let that hurt define you. Michael had taught me that lesson by being the worst version of himself. And I'd learned it by becoming the best version of myself. The sun was setting. I walked outside to my garden and knelt in the dirt. The tulips were blooming now. Red and yellow and pink. Beautiful because they'd survived the darkness of winter. Beautiful because they'd pushed through the earth toward the light. I was like those tulips. I'd survived my winter. I'd pushed through my darkness. And I was blooming. Not despite what Michael did. Not to spite him. But because that's what living things do. They grow. They adapt. They find the light and turn toward it with everything they have. Pulled a few weeds. Watered the new growth. Tended the life I'd planted. And I felt something settle in my chest. Real, genuine, hard-won peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you've survived the worst thing you thought would kill you. And not just survived. Thrive. That evening Robert came over. We cooked dinner together in my kitchen. He chopped vegetables while I seasoned the chicken. We moved around each other with the ease of two people who'd learned each other's rhythms. Who trusted each other to share space without demanding ownership. "You seem different," he said. "Lighter somehow. I read Michael's letter today. And I realized that I've been waiting for closure that I already had. I've been waiting for him to release me when I was never his to hold. I've been free this whole time. I just didn't know it." Robert set down the knife and pulled me into his arms. "You're remarkable, you know that? I'm just me." "Exactly. Just you. Which is remarkable." We ate dinner on my back porch as the stars came out. David called to say goodnight. Sarah texted a funny meme. My professor sent feedback on my latest paper with praise for my analysis. My life. Full and beautiful and entirely my own. Later, as Robert was leaving, he paused at the door. "I love you, you know," he said quietly. "No pressure. No expectations. I just wanted you to know." I looked at this kind man who'd been patient with my walls. Who'd understood my fear of trusting again. Who'd shown me that not all men were Michael. "I love you too," I said. And I meant it. Not the desperate, clinging love of my youth. But the mature, grounded love of someone who'd learned that love doesn't complete you. Complements you. After he left, I stood in my doorway looking at my quiet street and my peaceful house and my blooming garden. And I understood the final lesson. Forgiveness wasn't a single moment. It was a practice. Every day, I chose to forgive myself for the past and trust myself with the future. Every day, I chose to let go of what hurt me and embrace what healed me. And that practice, repeated over years, had transformed me from a victim of betrayal into an architect of my own life. That was the lesson. That was the wisdom. That was what I would carry forward. Not Michael's regrets. Not his apologies. But the knowledge that I was enough. Had always been enough. Would always be enough. All by myself. 2 years after Michael's death, I stood on a stage wearing a cap and gown, waiting to receive my master's degree. The auditorium was packed with graduates and their families, everyone celebrating the culmination of years of hard work. I scanned the crowd and found them. David, sitting in the third row with a huge smile on his face, holding up his phone to record the moment. Next to him, Robert, looking proud and handsome in the suit I'd helped him pick out. Sarah, wiping tears from her eyes even though the ceremony hadn't even started yet. My people. My chosen family. The ones who'd shown up when I needed them and celebrated with me when I succeeded. When they called my name, David let out a whoop that echoed through the auditorium. I laughed as I walked across the stage, shook the dean's hand, and accepted the diploma that represented so much more than a degree. It represented every late night studying. Every moment I wanted to quit but didn't. Every time I chose myself instead of sacrificing for someone else. It represented survival, transformation, rebirth. Afterward, we went to dinner at a nice restaurant. David insisted on paying, which made me both proud and a little sad. When had he become this capable adult who took his mother out to celebrate her achievements? To Mom, he said, raising his glass. The strongest person I know. Who taught me that falling down doesn't define you. Getting up does. We clinked glasses, and I felt that familiar swell of gratitude that had become my default emotion. Gratitude for this life. For these people. For the woman I'd become through the fire of loss and betrayal. I have something for you, David said, pulling out an envelope. Don't open it now. Wait until you get home. Later that night, alone in my bedroom with Robert sleeping peacefully beside me, I opened David's envelope. Inside was a letter written in his neat handwriting. Mom, I wanted to write this down because I'm not always great at saying these things out loud. Watching you earn your master's degree tonight, I kept thinking about the woman you were when Dad left. I was only 7, but I remember. I remember how you used to cry at night when you thought I was asleep. I remember how you'd put on a brave face every morning even though I could see you were breaking inside. I remember the cheap dinners and the worry lines and the exhaustion that lived in your bones. I pressed my hand to my mouth, tears already streaming. And then I look at you now, accomplished, confident, in love with someone who treats you like you're precious, thriving in ways I don't think you even fully recognize. And I realize something. Dad leaving was the worst thing that ever happened to us. But it was also, in some weird way, the best thing. Because it forced you to discover who you were without him. And Mom, who you are without him is extraordinary. I was sobbing now, trying to be quiet so I wouldn't wake Robert. You taught me the most important lesson anyone could learn. That you can survive the unsurvivable. That you can be betrayed and still learn to trust. That you can have your heart broken and still open it again. That you can lose everything and build something even better from the ruins. I'm the man I am today because you showed me what real strength looks like. Not the kind that never breaks. The kind that breaks and heals and breaks and heals and keeps choosing to try again. I love you, Mom. Thank you for never giving up. On yourself or on me. Your son, David. I set down the letter and looked around my bedroom. The comfortable bed I'd bought myself. The artwork on the walls that reflected my taste. The books on my nightstand about subjects that interested me. The life I'd built with my own hands. This was what victory looked like. Not revenge. Not vindication. Just peace. Deep, genuine, hard-earned peace. The next morning, I drove to the cemetery where Michael was buried. I hadn't been since the funeral. David visited sometimes, working through his own complicated feelings about his father. But I'd stayed away, unsure what I'd feel standing at his grave. But today felt right. Today I had something to say. His headstone was simple. Michael Robert Hayes. Beloved father. The dates of his too short life. I stood there for a long moment, letting the morning sun warm my face. I wanted to tell you that I forgive you, I said quietly. Not because you deserve it. Not because what you did was okay. But because carrying anger toward you was only hurting me. And I'm done hurting. I'm done letting your choices echo through my present. I'm done defining myself by what you took from me instead of what I built for myself. A bird sang somewhere in the trees. Life continuing, indifferent to human drama. I also wanted to thank you. I know that sounds strange. But leaving me forced me to become someone I never would have been if you'd stayed. Someone stronger. More independent. More aware of my own worth. You broke my heart, Michael. But I used those broken pieces to build something beautiful. And I couldn't have done that if you'd stayed and let me remain comfortable in my smallness. I knelt down and placed a single tulip on his grave. The same color as the ones in my garden. A symbol of survival. Of pushing through darkness toward light. I hope you found peace, I said. I hope wherever you are, you've forgiven yourself. 'Cause I have. Not for you. For me. So I can finally, completely be free. As I walked back to my car, I felt lighter than I had in years. Like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't know was there. And setting it down had revealed a version of myself I'd never met before. Unburdened. Unbroken. Whole. That afternoon I met Sarah for coffee. We sat at our favorite cafe. The same one where we'd met a dozen times over the years to talk about our exes and our struggles and our small victories. You're glowing, she said. Graduation suits you. It's not the graduation. It's everything. Sarah, I'm happy. Really genuinely happy. When did that happen? It's been happening for years. You've just been too busy surviving to notice. We talked about her kids, my relationship with Robert, the trip to Europe we were planning for the summer. Normal things. Happy things. The conversation of two women who'd walked through fire and come out the other side. Can I tell you something? Sarah said. When I first met you at that support group 10 years ago, I didn't think you'd make it. You look so broken. So defeated. I thought you'd be one of the ones who got stuck in their pain. I almost was. But you weren't. You chose differently. And Grace, you have no idea how many women I've watched you inspire. How many times I've told your story to someone who's going through what you went through. How many people you've given hope to without even knowing it. It's just my life. I was just trying to survive. That's what makes it powerful. You weren't trying to be inspirational. You were just trying to get through the day. And you did. Over and over. Until one day you weren't just surviving anymore. You were thriving. That evening I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open. I'd been thinking about Sarah's words. About the women she'd told my story to. About the power of sharing what you've survived. I started typing. My husband chose his secretary over us. 10 years later, he knocked on my door begging for help. This is what I learned. The words flowed. All of it. The betrayal. The struggle. The moment I said no to saving David and yes to teaching him to save himself. The reconstruction. The forgiveness. The life I'd built from ashes. I wrote for 3 hours straight. When I finished, I read it back and felt something shift in my chest. This wasn't just my story. It was the story of every woman who'd been left behind. Who'd been told she wasn't enough. Who'd had to rebuild from nothing. And it was also the story of what comes after. The part people don't always talk about. The part where you don't just survive. You transform. You become someone you never could have been if the worst thing hadn't happened. I posted it on a blog I'd started but rarely updated. Then I closed my laptop and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up to hundreds of comments. Women from all over sharing their own stories. Their own betrayals. Their own reconstructions. Thanking me for putting words to what they'd felt. For showing them that there was life on the other side of heartbreak. One comment in particular stood out. I'm sitting in my car right now, trying to decide if I should go back to my husband who cheated. Everyone is telling me to forgive him, to work it out, think of the kids. But reading your story, I realize something. Forgiving him doesn't mean staying. Forgiving him means freeing myself from his choices. Thank you for showing me there's another way. I stared at that comment through tears. If my pain could help even one woman choose herself, it was worth sharing. If my story could show someone that survival was possible, that thriving was achievable, then everything I'd been through had meaning beyond just my own experience. That night, Robert asked me to marry him. We were sitting on my back porch, the same porch where I'd watched Michael's regrets burn. The same porch where I'd planted my garden. The same porch where I'd learned what peace felt like. I know marriage is complicated for you, Robert said. I know you have history that makes this scary. But Grace, I love you. I love who you are. I love who you're becoming. I love the life we're building together. And I want to make it official. Not because I need to own you or complete you, but because I want to stand beside you and promise to keep showing up. Every day. No matter what. I looked at this man who'd been patient with my walls. Who'd celebrated my victories without needing them to be about him. Who'd shown me that not all love ends in betrayal. Yes, I said. Yes, I'll marry you. We got married 6 months later. Small ceremony. Just family and close friends. David walked me down the aisle. Sarah was my maid of honor. My nursing school professors came. My coworkers. The people who'd witnessed my transformation and celebrated it with me. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better. It was real. Two whole people choosing to walk through life together. Not because they needed each other to be complete, but because they wanted to share the adventure. Now, 3 years after that knock on my door that started everything, I stand in my kitchen making breakfast while Robert reads the paper and my garden blooms outside the window. David calls every Sunday. I'm teaching nursing students at the local university. I'm writing a book about survival and transformation. And I'm happy. Not the naive happiness of my first marriage, built on the fantasy of forever, but the grounded happiness of someone who's walked through darkness and chosen to believe in light anyway. If someone had told me that night 10 years ago when Michael walked out, that I'd end up here, I wouldn't have believed them. The pain was too big. The future too dark. The mountain too steep to climb. But I climbed it anyway. One step at a time. One choice at a time. One day at a time. And so can you. If you're reading this from the ashes of your own betrayal, know this. You will survive. You will rebuild. You will discover strength you didn't know you had. And one day you'll wake up and realize that the worst thing that ever happened to you was also the thing that set you free. So I ask you now, wherever you are in your journey, have you forgiven what hurt you? Not for them. For you. Have you let go of the story that says you weren't enough? Have you chosen yourself, even when it meant disappointing others? Have you looked in the mirror and recognized the warrior staring back? If not, today is the day. Right now is the moment. Choose yourself. Choose healing. Choose the belief that you deserve better than what broke you. 'Cause you do. You always did. You always will. This is my story. But it's also yours. It's all of ours. The story of falling down and getting back up. Of being broken and healing. Of losing everything and building something better. So tell me, what will you build from your ashes?